Hello and welcome along to highlights of this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour, the 41st edition of this tour of Germany and the 8th in the modern era, this ASO organised event. This time, much hillier than the last 2 years. It's been something of a sprint fest, the Lidl Deutschland Tour, these last 2 years, and this returning us right back to the hills, the hillier versions that we last saw when we finished at the ski resort of Winterberg 3 years ago. You're looking at some incredible scenes from Bad Orb, the spa town where this year's race all started. The incredible long building that houses the salt, the smell from which, I can tell you, because I was there on the ground, is uplifting, invigorating, as was our very short prologue in Bad Orb. Just 2.6 kilometres to separate all 107 riders who started this year's race. Last year we had a prologue in Essen. It was actually 3.1k, a bit longer, and it was Søren Vanskjold who won on that occasion and went on to win the race overall. Let's see if we'd have similar here. One of the shorter ones, certainly in recent years, 1 kilometre uphill up towards the spa itself, and then 1600 metres gradually downhill to the finish in Bad Orb, in the Orb Valley alongside the river. The fans these last few years have been building and building, and they watched Jens Vogt setting off his Kinderjoy of moving tour, including the balance bikers, young cyclists being inspired by Jens Vogt. The rain did come, by the way, just before the start of the 2.6 kilometre prologue in Bad Orb. First rider went off at just about 2 o'clock, Jakob Newman. And as always, the early starters starting to flesh out the best times. This gives you a really good indication of how things looked as well. It was slippery, very slippery. And there were a few who came a cropper. This is Martin Reisenberg, unfortunately, snapping his seat post off as well, the Unibet Rose Rockets man. And there's that Gradierwerk that I showed you before. In actual fact, this year's race would see 2 of them. A very spa-occupied race this year. This was another near miss, I'm pleased to say. Didn't come to anything for the Croatian rider for Bahrain Victorious, Fran Mihailovic, managing to keep that one up. Now, Paul Magnier was off around about 30th from the start, 32nd to be precise. It was still wet when the man who had just won the ADAC Hamburg Cyclassics on the Sunday did this on the Wednesday. Great ride by Paul Magnier to take the lead, and by quite some margin too. The French sprinter, a man very much in form for Soudal Quickstep, and using the prologue to set the best time. Oh, my goodness me though, did he pay for it? Severe oxygen debt for a long time afterwards for Paul Magnier, and he would be in that hot seat for a very long time. Danny van Poppel returning to a race where he's been so good these last few years, so close to the win, including last year in Kassel, where he actually finished across the line in first, but was relegated due to an irregular or dangerous sprint. And it was Søren Vanskjold given the win on that occasion, on that day. He went on to win as well. Now, Magnier was pushed close by Danny van Poppel, and another of those who we expected to be a GC threat this week too, Mateusz Wacek, the Czech champion in both time trial and road race, coming to the line. Very close, but not quite enough to beat Paul Magnier. You'll have noticed, by the way, it was road bikes only, no time trial bikes, so that does change things a little bit because there'll be some real time trial specialists in there, maybe Max Walscheid, who would have enjoyed being on their time trial bike. But this was a great ride by the big German for Lidl Trek. Walscheid, as he came across the line, good for 12th place. Another rider who's a regular performer at the Lidl Deutschland Tour. Then came Thibaut Del Grosso in very good form, the young Dutchman for Alpecin Premier Tech, with a really quick time. Technical course and that punchy climb suiting the cyclocross and emerging road superstar really well. Magnier, knowing he'd survived another one there, and they kept coming. Isaac Del Toro, fresh from 3rd place at this year's Tour de France, behind his own teammate, of course, Tadej Pogačar. He was second to last off, just ahead of the German national team's Dominik Röber. And you'll notice, by the way, the road had dried out considerably by this point as well. Marco Haller did a really good ride, the Austrian, for Tudor Pro Cycling. It was good enough for second at that stage, but the Mexican time trial and road race champion was ripping up the hill towards the top of the Spa as well. We contrast here the look of Paul Magnier with that of Lawrence Rex, his own teammate. Magnier enjoying there, seeing his own teammate Rex doing a brilliant ride, possibly enjoying it slightly more because Rex hadn't beaten him. This was when he got nervous though. Watching the face there of Paul Magnier, he'll have known how close it was between him and Isaac Del Toro. Del Toro not recognised as a prologue specialist. He is now. Look at that. 1.73 seconds over Paul Magnier, and poor old Paul Magnier has been sat in that hot seat the whole
Honestly,
time.
I feel good on the bike, but yeah, mentally I'm recovering still, so yeah, we'll see how it is the week. But yeah, happy to be back.
The goal is to win the Deutschland Tour.
What else? Yeah.
Said PK there with the obvious question, and the only answer that could be given. Isaac Del Toro, by the way, telling us after that interview that he's kind of enjoyed his holidays and he's having a lovely time. Much felt like he's come to Germany, of course, to extend his holidays. And what better way than by winning over Paul Magnier and Lawrence Rex as well. Great day out for the riders from Soudal Quickstep, showing their form very well at the start of this race. Rakani and others included, of course. And that's how things stood, rounded up for the general classification. Isaac Del Toro in the blue Lidl leaders jersey in this Deutschland Tour. The green jersey, the best sprinter as well. Most consistent finisher, I should call it. Also, of course, on the shoulders of Isaac Del Toro. And that would be worn by Paul Magnier the following day, of course, because Del Toro can't win both. He is still only, remarkably, 22 years of age, Isaac Del Toro. So he also held, after the prologue, the white jersey for the best rider under the age of 25. That would be worn the following day by Andrea Rakani. So a little look down on Bad Orb, because it was the scene of the start of stage 1 between Bad Orb and Schwäbisch Hall. The beautiful lush green forests of the Spessart heading eastward away from Bad Orb, away from the spa town that had so well hosted the start of this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour. Just to the east of Frankfurt. There'd be another day, by the way, that would test things weather-wise. We'd seen some rain ahead of the prologue. This was the route out through that beautiful Spessart forest, hunting terrain, glass-making history as well. And then going into Franconia, into the Franconian wine region, heading towards the Tauber Valley on the River Tauber and into Baden-Württemberg. Some big climbs at the finale, and those 3 intermediate sprint points that we'd had every day on this race, 2 of which for green jersey points in Schwäbisch Hall and Waldenberg, and then a bonus sprint on the Rollhofsteiger for 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. That would be interesting. Really tough final, by the way, coming into Schwäbisch Hall. And a nice rollout, great opportunity for riders to get into a first breakaway too. And to start to decide the King of the Mountains jersey on the Relkoschheim and the Hemersberg, the 2 classified climbs of the day. Classified climbs, by the way, in the Lidl Deutschland Tour, 3, 2 and 1 points at the top of all of them. There are no different classifications of climbs, just those 3. And there was the weather forecast, heading out onto day 2, stage 1 of the Lidl Deutschland Tour, and we had a breakaway too. Remarkably, only 1 team from the 3 German continental teams here was represented, and that was Rembi Radnet. It was Miguel Heidemann and Ole Thiele, the 2 teammates, in the company of the Frenchman Eland Laronde of the Spanish Caja Rural team. Laronde just 19 years of age. Heidemann in the breakaway, very experienced operator in this race, and the man, I'll just let you know now, Miguel Heidemann, the man who lost the King of the Mountains jersey on the final day last year to Picnic Posternel's Enzo Leinse. So starting off this year with definitely the intent of picking up King of the Mountains points, Miguel Heidemann, to make up for last year's final day disappointment. Eland Laronde, by the way, this man. Very impressive in the breakaway, contributing well as well, the Frenchman. And the other two German UCI Continental teams in the race, Lotto Kirnhaus and Stork MRW Bau, had missed this breakaway, which on day 2 of 5, I should have thought for them would have been a bit of a problem, because you'd always expect to see them up the road battling for things, not least when we have 9 world teams here in the Lidl Deutschland Tour. These were the shots looking into the back. The Tudor Pro Cycling, who bring a very informal, brought a very informed Mark Hirschi to the race. And this was UAE Team Emirates on the front for Isaac Del Toro, of course, but using their youngsters. Matteo van den Weingart, the 18-year-old youngest rider in the race, and Moritz Maus, their 19-year-old. Up front, our breakaway, we're headed towards the first King of the Mountains point of the day. The Reichholzheim. 3, 2 and 1 King of the Mountains points available for one of my favourite King of the Mountains jerseys in world cycling, the black King of the Mountains jersey in this race with red, yellow and blue dots on it. Well, I can tell you, they went over the top of that King of the Mountains point, and it was Ole Thaler taking it ahead of Miguel Heidemann and Eland Laron. So Thaler leading the King of the Mountains competition as they headed towards the Himmersberg. And this was us looking at the peloton as they rode through that Franconian wine territory. A little bit steadier. We skip ahead now to the Torber Valley and the run in to the Himmersberg, the second of those 2 King of the Mountains points. We were spoilt, we really were spoilt with Castle along the course of the week, by the way. This was the start of the Himmersberg, and it had turned nasty. The late summer weather that we were getting right the way across Europe, extending to this part of Baden-Württemberg in Germany, giving us some rain. It also teased out some fantastic late attacking riding as well. Juan Pedro Lopez of Movistar having a go, and then these two, Ole Thaler assuming he'd got this point, and Miguel Heidemann coming over the top of him for Remby Rednet. Let me start that again. Remby Radnet, in order to take the 3 points. So Thaler had taken 3 on the Reichholzheim, and the Himmersberg had been taken by his own teammate, Miguel Heidemann. At the time, in commentary, I was wondering whether this might have been a bit of beef between those two. It turns out, actually, it was friendly banter, friendly competition by 2 men who were rooming together this week too. Now, that did really stir things up, the Himmersberg, because it encouraged Louis Barret to get attacking. Louis Barret, the Frenchman, already attacking on stage 1, day 2. Visma Lease bike in this race with no obvious sprint options, just a bunch of really strong informed climbers, including Louis Barret, Wilco Kelderman and Bart Lement as well. Well, they weren't the only ones as well having a go. It was Bart Lement then covering as the next of the attacks came from Movistar's Nelson Oliveira, one of the older statesmen of this peloton. And this was the point at which the break got caught. It was then Bart Lement attacking, putting the pressure on again. Visma Lease bike really aggressive in the closing stages. But not until then, once that was caught, somebody possibly slightly unexpected to the GC favourites went on the attack. Theo Hébert, the young Frenchman for Total Energy, just 22 years of age, and having the audacity to go off by himself and get to the intermediate sprint in Waldenberg to get the 5 green jersey points. Benjamin Thomas of Cofidis just getting ahead of the peloton to get 3 points. And it was Nikias Arndt, the German rider, going across the line there to take the 1 point on Waldenberg. Slightly uphill sprint point as well. And we're getting closer to entering the 12-kilometre finishing loop in Schwäbisch Hall. Every one of these road stage finishes, by the way, had at least 1 finishing loop, 1, 2 or 3, making the most of the closed finishing circuits, for the fans in particular. We were just seeing there Max Walscheid, the German for Lidl Trek, attacking. German rider, of course, for now, a German team. A long time that team was registered as an American team, but now with Lidl as their main sponsor, they are a German registered team. And this was Wilco Kelderman, the Dutch road race champion, coming up, or trying to get up to Theo Ebert. Ebert noticed that it would be a really good opportunity to hook up with one of the strongest rouleurs in this peloton. And that's exactly what happened. So Wilco Kelderman and Theo Ebert combining together out front. And Visma Lease Bike seemingly on a free day to let any of their strongest climbers see if they could make something stick. Chasing was coming increasingly from Lidl Trek, thinking about either Max Welscheid or Tim Thorn Tweetenberg, should it come down to some kind of sprint. And then, of course, Soudal Quickstep out for Paul Magnier to see if Magnier could get revenge for what had happened in the prologue, where he'd been beaten at the very last by Isaac Del Toro. Well, the sun had come out, remarkably, at the finish in Swerbish Hale, dried everything out, and a massive crowd were there on the Thursday late afternoon to see these two come through the line, take yet another set of green jersey points for Theo Ebert, taking 5, Wilco Kelderman 3, and then Carlos Verona for Lidl Trek leading the peloton across the line as the Tour de France bell was rung. And the final sort of closing of the gap appeared to be being done by Lidl Trek. But don't forget, they still had that climb of Rolhofsteiger to go again before they would finish in Swerbish Hale. This was not an easy finale. And actually, the run-in to the base of the Rolhofsteiger and that bonus sprint point was really aggressive. It was Louis Barret who attacked, but look who went with him. Louis Barret, one of the best climbers in this race, being followed by Paul Magnier. Louis Barret getting the 3 seconds, Paul Magnier 2, which would definitely help him after finishing second in the prologue yesterday. Magnier following Barret. But this was much more now about the stage win. And it was remarkable to watch at the time how this had happened. Isaac Del Toro in the blue Lidl race leader's jersey, watching Magnier ride up the road, Barret with him. This was closing in on the finish. You can see last 1,800 metres, and Louis Barret tried to shake out Paul Magnier. I've heard it said before, wow, Paul Magnier, pure sprinter, can't climb. Watch this. It was absolutely remarkable by Magnier, because it wasn't just that he was the only one who thought to go with Barret, he was the only one who could. But in the end, the Frenchman was clear by himself, rounding in on winning stage 1, and having ridden well in the prologue the day before, we all knew as we watched it, he was good for the race lead. The fist in the air, the blue Lidl jersey would be his, and there was the group closing in behind, and it was a desperate Isaac Del Toro trying to salvage his race lead, his blue jersey. He was going for the 6-second time bonus too. He had Nathaniel Tesfacion alongside him, Giulio Ciccone, Edoardo Zambanini. But it was Isaac Del Toro who took it.
For sure, it's a really good victory. But I knew I had really good legs when I arrived here. I'm really happy to win today and to beat that name's really strong riders. So it's really nice.
It is an incredible field that came to this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour. Continues to attract the best of the riders in this gap between the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España. Louis Barret, the stage winner, the Frenchman of Visma Lease Bike, getting his second professional victory after the one that came just a short while ago at the Tour de Pologne as well. Del Toro, Ciccone, and Nathaniel Tesfacion as well, just illustrating what a cracking field on this day, as he said himself, Louis Barret had beaten as well. So he took over the race lead going into day 3, stage 2, with a 9-second lead over Isaac Del Toro. Giulio Ciccone snapping at their climbing heels. And there were the Mexican bands out to celebrate the first ever Mexican rider or riders to ride the Lidl Deutschland Tour in its long history, because it wasn't just Isaac Del Toro. We also had Edgar David Cadena, the Mexican for Stork MRW Bau, whose birthday had been on this very day. In fact, they were there to celebrate him. Miguel Heidemann back in the King of the Mountains jersey, as he was all the way through last year's Lidl Deutschland Tour. Let's see if he can hang on to it this time, though, and not have it taken off him on the final day. Isaac Del Toro, of course, the best young rider. He wouldn't be able to wear white the next day. That would go to Edoardo Zambanini of Team Bahrain Victorious. So going into Friday's stage 2, this economical route for this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour continued, starting where it had finished once again in Schwäbisch Hall in Baden-Württemberg. Another beautiful setting for the start of the stage, and the riders also very thankful to have rested here overnight. You would be, wouldn't you? But these stages getting shorter as you go through them, so therefore this is the second longest this day between Schwäbisch Hall and Offenbach and the Quatsch. Offenbach on the Quatsch. 198 kilometres, 1,944 metres of elevation. This, the expected sprint stage. The Friday stage, lumpy early on and then getting flatter and flatter once they were out of Neckar wine country following the river Neckar itself. This stage, by the way, going very close to where the final stage would be in Heilbronn, in fact crossing the course and the river Neckar on route 2. There's the Neckar going down the middle. Just the one King of the Mountains point early on, the Juxkorf, and then 2 intermediate sprint points, Landhausen and Oberhausen, before again that very late bonus sprint point. Just the one finishing lap today, 13 kilometres in Offenbach and the Quatsch. And these were the scenes as the entirety, all 107 riders still in. Thankfully there hadn't been any issues, no one had been lost from the race or eliminated, of course. 107 riders rolling out. Teams of 6, by the way, in this Lidl Deutschland Tour, so slightly smaller. And the weather turned nasty once again. We had a break of 3 too. This time, though, better representation because we had all 3 of the German continental teams represented. Quite predictable, really. Ole Thaler was back in the breakaway again for Rembe Radner as they went past the Hockenheim in tricky conditions, I suspect, for riding a motorbike, as it was for riding a pedal bike. Ben Felix Jochum, of course, of Lotto Kernhaus, was taking it carefully, but they were pushing hard in the breakaway, the 3. Also in there, by the way, was the Spaniard Alvaro Sagrado of Stork MRW bound. So the 3 German 3rd division teams, all represented in those 3 up the road too. So that's kind of as is to be expected, or would have been expected the day before, but it didn't quite happen like that. And it meant we'd get some interesting battles between these 3. This was the run into the Landshausen sprint for the 5, 3 and 1 green jersey points. Ben Felix Jochum wanting to make sure he got them. Interesting conversations, though, going on between Pascal Encorn of Soudal Quickstep and Vegard Stekelengen of UAE Team Emirates as they tried to decide who should do the most work in the chase and why people were chasing too. After the conversation, Vegard Stekelengen going back to the front, plenty of the Soudal Quickstep riders still there too, and Danny Van Poppel pulling on his rain jacket. It wasn't a cold day, but it was just constantly damp, and the speed at which they were going meant you would get cold if you were wet. Louis Barret keeping his blue race leaders jersey dry underneath that rain jacket. And it continued. An awful lot of work being done by former Dutch national champion Pascal Encorn for Soudal Quickstep. This was the sprint in Oberhausen. It was Alvaro Sagrado who had taken the opening sprint in Landhausen. This was Oberhausen and exactly the same result. Alvaro Sagrado ahead of Ben Felix Jochum and Ole Thaler sitting at the back. The thing is, though, Thaler I'd have thought was in the breakaway today for the King of the Mountains points. Well, in fact, Alvaro Sagrado won the King of the Mountains points and both of those sprints as well. So Ole Thaler only able to get 1 more point. Have to say that, though, it was enough to get him back into the lead of the King of the Mountains competition. So I guess you could say job done, but I'm sure it wasn't quite in the way he would have intended. Well, you can see it for yourselves there with 47.5k to go. It was down to 44 seconds. For the 3 out front. Would they be able to survive to that bonus sprint point? None of these 3 were a great threat to the general classification, so the pacing behind was deliberate but steady as they built coming back in towards Offenbach. This was the day that any of the teams with sprint ambitions and riders with sprint ambitions had been looking forward to, because the Saturday and Sunday were always going to be much, much harder. And Sunday's stage a little bit unknown, I guess, finishing in Heilbronn. Could be a sprint, could be one for the general classification favourites, but they had 3 ascents of a really tough climb on the finishing circuit in Heilbronn, so a bit uncertain. This day, though, really on paper, not an uncertain day. These are the days that Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe with Danny Van Poppel, Lidl Trek with Max Walscheid, Tim Thorn-Tuitenberg, Soudal Quickstep with Paul Magnier, and a few others were thinking they needed to make the most of if they're bringing their sprinters to this race was to really count. This was Antonio Morgado, 22-year-old Portuguese rider, pulling on the front for UAE Team Emirates. And part of this, of course, was to keep things safer for Paul Magnier by keeping him up and out of trouble as best as possible. This, though, was the run into the intermediate sprint point in Belheim. Well, Isaac Del Toro being led out by Niels Pollitt, Mateusz Wacek on his wheel, and that's how it happened. The line came up on them a little bit quick. Isaac Del Toro got the 3 seconds, Wacek the 2, and just like that, the line had sort of popped up, and as they went across it, that was it. This was Miguel Heidemann with a rain cape over his King of the Mountains jersey as well, pulling for his team. And this was the peloton going through the line with 13 kilometres to go. 13 pretty flat kilometres, one little loop in it, and it was at this point we started thinking, right, this is going to come down to a sprint. You can see it here in Offenbach and the Queich. Back out to the vineyards, some quite narrow roads as well to get everyone into position on as well, but the run into Offenbach and the Queich pretty well suited for a sprint finish as well. Bahrain victorious, trying to make sure they'd muscle their way to the front. For Phil Bauhaus, still yet to win a stage of his national tour as well. But then come Juri Leitao in the green. Juri Leitao of Caja Rural up alongside Paul Magnier. Coming in behind them, one of the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe riders. We thought it might be Danny Van Poppel, but that sprinting form is nothing like his. It was Alessio Maggianotti, the 19-year-old stagiaire, not even a pro yet for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, stepping up to the win.
Possibile, guardando anche gli altri velocisti, ascoltando i consigli di tutta la squadra. Sì, è un sogno battere Paul perché abbiamo visto tutti al Giro d'Italia cosa è riuscito a fare. Sì, ora me lo godo, diciamo, anche se domani sarà un altro giorno.
A very modest man, actually. Young man. Some would say boy, but he's a man. Paying tribute to his team, thanking them for their hard work. And that is his account open before he's even a professional. He's won his first professional race. Remember the name, Alessio Maggianotti. On the day, and the Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe man getting the better of Paul Magnier. Really ate out. Quite an incredible way to start his winning win. Well, Louis Barret still in the leader's jersey, going into the next day, the really tough expected Queen stage to Bad Dürkheim. A woolly hat on the head of Isaac Del Toro. What was he planning? And would it work? And they were the shifts on stage 2. Magnier moving back up, and Ole Thaler back into that King of the Mountains jersey that he appeared to be sharing, at the moment anyway, with Miguel Heidemann. Heidemann down 1 place and 1 point. Sagrado moving right up to 3rd, the Spaniard, after a successful day, winning the only 3 points, the only King of the Mountains point on stage 2. Isaac Del Toro still in the best young riders jersey, but eyeing up the blue. That jersey would once again be worn by Edoardo Zambanini the following day. Talking of the following day, this was always set to be the Queen stage. Stage 3, the Saturday stage, day 4 of course, after the prologue, racing between Herxheim and Bad Dürkheim, riding right up into the Pfälzerwald Mountains. Now the Pfälzerwald Mountains are, for those of you who don't know, the larger German extension to the north of what the French call the Vosges. Of course, the Vosges have been very popular setting for Tour de France stages these last few years, and the Pfälzerwald Mountains, a big feature of the final 2 days of this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour. And there's that snaking route going westward into those mountains as well. Double ascent of the Kolmit in the first half, and then the double ascent of the Annaberg in the back end of today's stage were expected to create serious separation for the general classification. It was a beautiful stage. It always is when we get to the weekend of the Lidl Deutschland Tour too. The fans all out to enjoy it. Races, rides for amateurs and youngsters taking part as well, meaning so many people out on their bikes all the way over this brilliant weekend of the Lidl Deutschland Tour. And this was how the weather looked. Another slightly clouded day and cooler too, 18 degrees, the middle part of which was met by some of the most torrential rain I've ever seen on a professional bike race. It didn't affect Nelson Oliveira because when we went live on air, Nelson Oliveira was already up the road by himself for Movistar. Not seen as a great threat to the general classification, but certainly someone you don't let go for too long because he's one of the most experienced pacers and time trialists in this peloton too. And he's done this way to win big races before. Look at these shots. Understandably, Visma Lease bike working to protect Louis Barret's blue jersey. And also on this day, we had earlier had a breakaway that included Miguel Heidemann. Now, Heidemann had been in the break with Ben Jochum again and made sure he was taking maximum points. He got 6 points on the day on the Lolosruhe and the Kolmit as well. This was with 57 kilometres to go. Nelson Oliveira still clear going through the lush green forest of the Pfälzerwald Mountains. And Theo Ebel had been at it again in this race, winning the intermediate sprint point in Elmstein just before being caught. Was going over the second of the big ascents in the Pfälzerwald central section after Elmstein. Under a minute for Nelson Oliveira at that point. Quite remarkable that he'd managed to not only get away by himself, but also then extend and maintain that lead for an awfully long time through the middle section of the race. Well, this was the gap with Nelson Oliveira with 35k to go, still doing this really impressive ride. However, UAE Team Emirates XRG were burning up their resources. Antonio Morgado drawing none other than Isaac Del Toro clear in the green jersey and forcing, he had to, there's no choice about it, Louis Barret to go after him. Now watching this shot, you'd be assuming Louis Barret would be able to close up behind Isaac Del Toro. Well, he was trying to, until he was then eventually caught as well. Nelson Oliveira just time trialing his way away out front, but he had a sense something was coming. That was the top of the Rotsteg. Penultimate classified climb of the day, the Rotsteg. Nelson Oliveira over the top first, ahead of Isaac Del Toro. Really tough climb. You can see from the body language, the working form there of Isaac Del Toro. Well, one rider was chasing him. Nelson Oliveira still at the front steadily. There was Isaac Del Toro. He looked round to see none other than his housemate from San Marino. They share two apartments in the same building together. None other than Giulio Pellizzari, who had tapped away from the front of the peloton and was riding across to him. Now, I'm not suggesting for for just one moment this is some sort of planned move, but it was a very convenient one. And it looked to be working nicely as the sun came out and we had some of the most stunning rainbows I think I've ever seen in a cycling race over Bad Dürkheim. Beautiful setting. It dried out for the finish as well. I'm glad it did. Nelson Oliveira was hanging on to those two out front, but it was proper action stations for Visma Lease bike, who were ringing the alarm bells back there because two riders up the road, the two you don't let go, are Isaac Del Toro and Giulio Pellizzari. Worth pointing out, by the way, Pellizzari was not a threat on GC. He'd lost over a minute, nearly a minute and a half in actual fact to this point. But Isaac Del Toro was second on GC, of course, and Louis Barret knew it. This was a really impressive ride by the Frenchman. Louis Barret just kept going again and again and again. He was not giving up. Neither was Nelson Oliveira, sitting in third. sensing maybe with 15k to go, he could just stay there and ride to the finish in third, or even catch these two if they messed around. Well, there was no messing around. Giulio Pellizzari inside 10k to go, heading towards the finish to complete this second of the two 10-kilometre laps in Bad Dürkheim. Every time reascending the Annaberg. They had the Annaberg to come on this final lap, and on it would be 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds. Visma Lease Bike were using any of the resources they had left. On the finish line, it was Jörg Zimmermann attacking away from the bunch there to get the 1 green jersey point. But the 5 and the 3 had already been taken by Giulio Pellizzari and Isaac Del Toro. So heading back out towards the Annaberg, Giulio Pellizzari, the Italian for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, and Isaac Del Toro. As I say, two riders who know each other very well. The attacking behind them was spectacular on this Queen stage too. Mark Hirschi attacking, taking with him, or going across to Mathieu Bergadeau, the Frenchman for Total Energies, who looked in really sparkling climbing form, I have to say, on this stage. This was the top of the Annaberg, and those bonus seconds, 3 bonus seconds taken by Isaac Del Toro. Giulio Pellizzari in second, getting 2. And Mark Hirschi, who'd got clear of the peloton, the Swiss rider for Tudor Pro Cycling, and taking a lot of risks. Now, I have to say, as I watched this, I thought, now, this is Mark Hirschi. If these two mess around at the front, he could catch them. But coming back into Bad Dürkheim, all the time, it was Isaac Del Toro doing longer, harder pulls to really hammer home the general classification. And I was wondering, actually, when they come to the line, I wonder whether Isaac Del Toro has still got it in his legs to beat Giulio Pellizzari. He was really leaning on the pedals and possibly making sure that it was all about the GC and not the stage. Don't worry, though. They'd have a very, very good sprint for it. And Louis Barret behind, look at him. Down to just himself as his sole resource, trying to save the jersey. Pellizzari came around Isaac Del Toro. Del Toro making sure of trying to get right on the wheel of Giulio Pellizzari. But the Italian youngster for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe got his stage win, and a brilliant 2-up between these two good friends as well. That had worked out nicely for both of them. Mark Hirschi couldn't quite catch them, but it was a great ride by the Swiss rider for Tudor Pro Cycling. He looked back to see a decent gap back to this lot. Well, that was actually Thibaut Del Grosso, I think, leading them in on that occasion as well.
We are super friends, me and Isaac, of course. During the race, we have a good battle, so I always say to him, we are friends 1 centimeter before the finish line. From there, we are friends, and then yeah, I'm super happy that now he's leader in GC. Tomorrow is still one day. We will try with Alessio, but yeah, I think it's perfect day for me, Isaac, and for all San Marino.
2 stage wins in a row then for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. By the way, it was Senna Remain in 4th and not Thibaut Del Grosso. There he was, the Alpecin Premier Tech man, ahead of Andrea Raccagni, Natnio Tesfacion, Stefano Aldani. Antonio Morgado, also good for a top 10 place, even after all the work he did for this man. Mexican road race and time trial champion. Isaac Del Toro back in the race lead. The only change in the top 10 there, Louis Barret dropping down 1. He will fight to the end with just 1 more stage to go. 52 seconds the gap between them. Isaac Del Toro also leading in the green jersey, the Skoda points classification, going into the final day, and that jersey would be worn by Giulio Pellizzari. Dark skies on the horizon too. Rain not yet done with this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour, and this is the same point Nigel Heidemann found himself at 1 year ago, in the lead of the King of the Mountains jersey, going into the final day, and he lost it on the final day last year in Magdeburg. Let's see if that will happen in Heilbronn. Isaac Del Toro, of course, at 22, still the best rider. Under 25, and that jersey would be worn on the final day in Heilbronn by Andrea Raccagni. Talking of which, Heilbronn, city centre finish for this year's 41st Lidl Deutschland Tour, and a beautiful one. I'm pleased to say the rain actually didn't come, or in fact it did, it came after the finish, but not for a while. It was a lovely sunny day in the city of Heilbronn, set on the Neckar River, the beautiful Neckar River. Back in wine country as well, as I say, stage 2 road. Sign on at this morning in 7 who had started the final day, riding out along the river Neckar. Giulio Pellizzari looking happy, having got his stage win the day before, and of course with a teammate, Alessio Maggianotti, having won the day before that. We heard Pellizzari say he would try for a Maggianotti stage win on the final day. What about Danny Van Poppel? Embarrassment of riches at Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. An embarrassment of riches in the break. Tay, also on this day, 6 riders. All German except one Frenchman in there as well. Dutchman, I should say, Molinard. And there they were, going on to the Jägerhaus for the first time, having come back into Heilbronn with just over a minute of lead too. Dominic Rober was there for the German national team. Ian Kings, German rider for Visma Lease Bike. Molinard, as I say, for Picnic PostEZ. Miguel Heidemann was there in his King of the Mountains jersey. And this was Lennart Vöge of Stork MRW bout, with Molinard just in front of him as well in that breakaway. Well, he wanted to make sure of it this year, and Miguel Heidemann of the Rembe Radnet team in the King of the Mountains jersey this time was not going to have it taken off him. He was there though with Ben Felix Jochum, who was one of his closest challengers, along with Isaac Del Toro, for that King of the Mountains point as well. And Ben Felix Jochum himself on a great ride for Lotto Kernhaus Outlet Montabau, but he wasn't quite strong enough to beat Miguel Heidemann to those points as well. This was the peloton on the same climb. Gap still just under a minute and a half. Calm at this point, because I think they could see already, as we could, that the Jägerhaus was probably going to be hard enough to smash this race apart. This was Dominic Rober trying to get back in touch. There was a massive, I think we call it activation, a massive Lidl centre just over the top of the Jägerhaus climb in the direction of Donbron. In fact, that's exactly where it was. 2 laps later, there would be a bonus sprint point at Donbron, and the riders knew that. Heidemann, Ian Kings, Ben Felix Jochum making their way past that enormous Lidl laid table there, where I believe all the fans had been sitting enjoying some lunch. I'm pleased to say in the sunshine. I did see that during our live coverage and thought, oh my goodness me, if the weather had been like the day before, it would have been atrocious. It was actually a lovely place to be up there on the climb on the Jägerhaus, overlooking Heilbronn beneath for this. How would this one end though? That's the question. There were people thinking it could be a big bunch sprint finish in Heilbronn. Jonathan Milan had been a winner here the last time we were here, but this was a tougher finish for sure. And this was the scene with 2 laps to go, going towards the sprint point. It was uncontested really. Ben Felix Jochum riding through and getting the 5 green jersey points ahead of Ian Kings and Miguel Heidemann, German leading group. Now, this was Louis Barret, former race leader, trying to string things out on Jägerhaus. Over the top of Jägerhaus, it was still those 3 leading, with just about a minute of lead over the summit, looking to come back into Heilbronn. Great shot there of the ride down into the city. And a massive crowd out to see them come back to the line one more time. And this time it would be another intermediate sprint point for the green jersey, 5, 3 and 1. None of these riders contesting it or worried about it really particularly. And on this occasion, with 21k to go, it was Ian Kings, the young German of Visma Lease Bike, leading across the line first ahead of Ben Felix Jochum and Miguel Heidemann. Their gap down to 29 seconds. Last few pulls for the last of the UAE Team Emirates XRG riders back across the river Neckar, heading eastward again towards Jägerhaus for the final time. Now, how would the Jägerhaus climb be used this time? We've seen it was hard enough. The breakaway was caught, and before they'd actually got to it, because don't forget, this time on the Jägerhaus climb and over the top of it would be the final King of the Mountains point, and then crucially 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds at Donbron. Look at this. It really exploded the last time up through the vines there as well. Louis Barret leading, Matthias Vacek in the white, and then came Isaac Del Toro, who said, thank you for that, and good night, I'm out of here. This was the last classified climb of the race. He didn't need to do this. But Isaac Del Toro, I think, knows no other way we can safely say he's in very, very good form in this race. And we can say the same of Louis Barret, who does not lay down arms. You can just see the yellow figure of Louis Barret in the background there chasing. Likewise, METTEZ, not giving up at all. But the three of them split almost evenly, the gaps between them. And a time trial to the finish being ridden by Isaac Del Toro. Giulio Pellizzari chasing in order to try and set up a sprint finish for either Maggianotti or Van Poppel. But out front, a race leader doing Pogacarian things, as you'd expect from Isaac Del Toro. He's his own man. Yes, he rides for the same team as Tadej Pogacar. There are so often so many people saying there are so many similarities between them physiologically, physically, and the way they impact themselves on a race.
There were 6 at the start, and all of us worked really hard, and yeah, also my parents were there to watch the race, so I'm really proud to win in front of them, and it's also the birthday of my cousin, so it's a nice win for his birthday.
What a lovely moment. What a lovely way to finish off. In the sunshine, too, it seemed appropriate. Everything tied up neatly. Paul Magnier, deserving of a stage win, as all these riders are, but after everything he'd been through in this race, getting it taken off him in the prologue, Paul Magnier made things
the plan
good.
was not to go, was more or less like security, but yeah, then I just see the gap behind and I say, why not? So I just went full gas. For sure, the highway you go faster in the bunch, but yeah, it was good attempt, I think, and was a close one.
Isaac Del Toro getting yet another win. 32 career victories, Isaac Del Toro with the general classification here, and on the same day, 32 career victories for Paul Magnier, 2, and they're both 22 years of age. How's that for numerical perfection? There was the final podium, Isaac Del Toro, Louis Barret, and a very strong-looking Mark Hirschi. Another general classification victory for the Mexican, in front of the Mexican fans too. And there was the green jersey sprint classification. Isaac Del Toro maintaining and holding that one as well. Miguel Heidemann did it. A year on from losing that jersey, he is the king of the mountains in the Lidl Deutschland Tour, ahead of Ben Jochum and Isaac Del Toro up into third. Well, Isaac Del Toro was, of course, the best young rider as well, under the age of 25. Ahead of Andrea Recagni and METTEZ. There was a prize for the most combative rider every day, and then the super combative as well. Ben Felix Jochum, richly deserved as being the most aggressive rider. Plenty of days for him in the breakaway too, and the most aggressive rider on the final stage too. Massive crowds, I have to say, in Heilbronn. It was a brilliant day to be out. As a cycling fan in Germany, Movistar with the best team on general classification too. They were great value for money this week, at least with Nelson Oliveira's big Queen Stage breakaway too. That's how the team standings were, the top 10 of them. Anyway, at the end of this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour, delighted Mexican fans, and there were the jerseys, 3 of them belonging to Isaac Del Toro. Well, he came and did it, and it was a cracker. Tough weather all week, it has to be said, on this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour, but another brilliant outing for this race, which continues to grow and grow. Thank you for being with us throughout it and for enjoying these highlights.